This means Yuka Roy here in the studio. Good evening to you. Great to see you. Donald Trump stepping up his attack on the head of the US Federal Reserve, with prosecutors issuing subpoenas and threatening to incriminate Jerome Powell.
Well, Mark, the US president has repeatedly attacked the Fed chairman verbally, criticizing him for being too slow to lower interest rates. The criminal investigation by the Justice Department, although Mr. Trump has denied involvement, takes that battle to a new level. In an unprecedented move, Jerome Powell responded in a video message suggesting it was politically motivated. Here's Charlie James with the details.
Another bombshell dropped by the U.S. Justice Department. Sunday night, Donald Trump's DOJ announced it is weighing criminal charges against Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. He's the man in charge of the U.S. Central Bank, controlling the monetary policy that shapes inflation, currency, and interest rates. Trump has attacked Powell for not cutting interest rates as aggressively as the president would like, and Powell called this action retaliation.
The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president.
The potential indictment is related to Senate testimony Powell gave back in June about the $2.5 billion renovation of the Fed's headquarters in Washington, D.C.
He's strong, he's committed, he's smart.
Powell was tapped for the job back in 2017 by none other than Donald Trump himself.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for the faith that you have shown in me.
Former President Joe Biden then reappointed Powell for a second term in 2022. But since retaking the presidency, Donald Trump has not hidden his disdain for the man he chose.
People aren't able to buy a house because this guy is a numbskull. He keeps the rates too high.
The Federal Reserve is supposed to operate independent of politics. Technically, the U.S. president can fire the Federal Reserve chair, but it has never been done in the central bank's 112-year history, and the economic repercussions of such a move could be stark. Trump has already used the legal system to go after his political enemies, including former FBI Director James Comey, and criminal charges against Powell could create a legal opening to fire him.
And as Charlie was saying there, this latest attack on the US Central Bank has spooked the markets.
Well, Mark, comments by the Fed chairman have often moved markets, and so have the president's repeated attacks on the institution regarding interest rates. This time round, there doesn't seem to be any panic moves, but the event did send investors flocking to safe haven assets. Gold rocketed past $4,600 an ounce to a fresh record high. Remember, the metal was worth about $2,700 an ounce just a year ago. Silver also surged to a new record, currently up 8% from the previous session. The US dollar weakened slightly, but the yield on 10-year Treasury bonds has remained almost unchanged. And US stocks have resumed their upward trend after starting the day on a weaker note, as investors seemingly shrugged off concerns over the Fed's independence.
The independence of monetary policy is important because a weak central bank can damage the economy. Tell us, Yuka.
Well, in response to a criminal probe launched against Jerome Powell, a group of former Fed chairs and Treasury secretaries issued scathing criticism, saying this is how monetary policy is made in emerging markets with weak institutions with highly negative consequences for inflation and the functioning of their economies, which is what has been happening in Iran. Now, under international sanctions, but also following years of mismanagement and corruption, Iran has been facing a cash crunch. And to prop up the banking sector and finance government operations, the central bank has turned to printing more money without putting control measures in place. This has led to skyrocketing inflation. According to the IMF, consumer prices rose by 42% last year and is expected to move up towards 60% this year. Food inflation is estimated to have risen to over 70%. Last October, a World Bank report expected the economy to shrink both in 2025 and 2026 and said close to 10 million Iranians had fallen into poverty in the past decade. And Iran's currency has nosedived. At the time of the Islamic Revolution, $1 was worth about 70 Iranian rial. Last month, the currency sank to a new record low with 1.4 million rials needed to convert into $1. And it's been falling even further.
We have all sides of the Iranian crisis covered. Yuka there with the business on it. Next, the EU moving forward with a massive trade deal with the Latin American Mercosur bloc in spite of strong opposition from the likes of France.
Well, last Friday, Mark, most EU members approved the Mercosur trade deal. And this Monday, the Commission spokesperson said it could even be applied before the European Parliament ratified it. Meanwhile, farmers are continuing to protest, fearing an influx of cheaper products from Latin America could undercut their businesses. Luke Traeger has more.
Angry French farmers conduct symbolic checks on freight transport. They're refusing to throw in the towel over the European Union's trade deal with South America's Mercosur.
We're checking trucks, mainly refrigerated ones. We look at all origins from every country. And if something seems even a little suspicious, we stop them. Then we wait for customs to come help us so we can inspect and take a closer look at what's actually inside the trucks.
After a majority of EU states backed it on Friday, the deal is set to create the largest free trade area in the world, one the bloc thinks will help its businesses save €4 billion a year in customs duties. With Brussels seeking to diversify commerce, US tariffs set afire under what had been a 25-year-long negotiation, beset by fury from the continent's farmers fearing an influx of cheaper products not made to EU standards that would undercut already meagre profits. They haven't been moved by EU promises to protect them with concessions added to the deal.
It's a perfect example of what's being offered to farmers in terms of agricultural policy. Today, for us farmers, there's a deep sense of unease that's set in, a real lack of trust.
Ireland, Poland, Hungary and Austria all voted with agricultural heavyweight France against the deal.
France has made its voice heard. It is not the end of the story. There is a major player that will come into play, and that is the European Parliament.
Protesters are already planning demonstrations outside the European Parliament in the hope they could prevent it from ratifying the deal. It's set to be signed in Paraguay next weekend.
Luke Traeger with that report, and that's it from the business desk.
Yuka, thank you very much indeed. Yuka back with more business